All right. It is time for episode 166 of the Red Rain podcast. Please welcome in your host, Walter Mitchell.
Thank you, Kyle Little Rock Ledbetter. Donning his Washington Nationals cap. That's an interesting choice du jour with all that's going on down there. But we were not going to talk about that today. We're going to get right to the Cardinals and the business of playing the Seahawks this weekend at Lumen Field. Just an FYI going in, the Cardinals have not beaten the Seahawks. Tomorrow it will be for 3 years. The last time they beat the Seahawks was in, you might recall, in 2021. And it was when Colt McCoy at Lumen Field dropped 326 yards passing en route to a 23-13 critical NFC West win because that win, as it turns out, helped get the Cardinals in the playoffs that year because they struggled down the stretch. And had they not gotten those two wins from Colt, they probably wouldn't have made the playoffs if they didn't play better down the stretch. So, but it's been quite a difficult time with the Seahawks for the last 3 years. And, on Geno Smith, to my knowledge, I don't know if he started against the Cardinals ever before, but I think he's 4-0 against the Cardinals. He was 0-5 against the 49ers, and of course he broke that streak. And so wouldn't it be great if Kyler Murray and the Cardinals could reverse that script and win for the first time in 3 years against the pesky Seahawks? So with that in mind, we're going to talk today about some key personnel decisions the Cardinals have to make, both for this week and maybe peeking down, the road a little bit to, not only the rest of this season, but potentially into next year. So, because there's some interesting stuff going on here. Before we get started with the guys who've been with the team for a while, and the sort of decisions that JG and Drew Petzing and Nick Rallis will have to make about who to start in certain places this week. We'll be integrating two players, defensive players, into this week's game plan in ways they have not been inserted yet. Of course, the first one looks like Darius Robinson, assuming he will be active for the game. I think that they will activate him, and I think they'll use him on passing downs to rush Geno Smith, as will, and I think that the role for Mr. Browning, who they just acquired in a deal, the Ohio State Buckeye edge rusher, I think is going to increase. He could. They do envision him as a three down player. And with his athleticism on that side, on the weak outside linebacker spot, that could come in very handy this week because of the sneaky mobility that the Niners saw and that I've been talking about Geno since he's been playing, that he has in escaping the pocket and being able to matriculate the ball downfield. So and that's an element in this game that both teams are going to have to address. I mean, obviously the Seahawks might have more of a consistent issue of it with Kyler and his running threat and scrambling threat, but Cardinals will need to make this a bit of a priority to somehow be able to corral Geno Smith when necessary. So having Robinson and Browning injected into this defense is very exciting. I think, on certain pass rushes, they may be rushing in tandem on that, right side of the Cardinals defense. So that's going to be really exciting to watch. All right. So, but the the interesting dilemmas the Cardinals have now are at left tackle. I mean, excuse me, right tackle, um, and at free safety, and long term at kicker. All right, so I want to talk about that today. First of all, the question is, with the Cardinals having just activated Jonah Willams at right, to be active on game days. The question becomes, do you insert him right back in and take Kelvin Beachum out? So that question was posed to Jonathan Gannon today, and he responded by saying that it's a day-to-day thing, and he said that they've been really impressed with how Kelvin Beachum has played. I mean, to that tune, as he gave up 0 pressures, 0 sacks against the Jets and their pass rush. And he's just been solid as a rock. Jonathan Gannon went as far as to say, too, that in his mind, Kelvin Beachum is a captain or behaves like a captain, and that JG said that he's relied on Beachum for a number of, he's asked him a number of questions that, throughout the season that he thought were important, and that Kelvin has been a valuable asset in the building in a number of ways, answering questions and providing leadership. My guess is, and today Kelvin is getting his customary Veterans Day off from practice, so they have Jonah in there playing at right tackle, and I think in the open portion of practice, I think in the closed practice they're going to flip him too, and put Christian Jones at right tackle, because my guess is, and Gannon said, we got to weigh in, how well the continuity has been helping the offensive line and things like. Once he started talking on those levels, I started thinking, I think they're going to stick with Beach for now. That the chemistry up front. The Cardinals, as we will talk about later, now rank 4th in the NFL per PFF in pass protection, pass blocking. So I don't think that's something to mess with, particularly in light of all the, and Jonathan Gannon said so well, the kind of conditions you see up in Seattle with the crowd and the weather. I think they're going to go with continuity here and keep going with Beachum. Could it be a scenario? Well, they'll platoon him. I know they've done that at certain positions before, but in this case, I don't expect that unless there's some sort of circumstance that warrants it. So yeah, I mean, I think Beach is going to be the guy, and I think he'll be the guy moving forward until it seems clear that they should make a move. But right now, because so much of offensive line play is continuity and chemistry, and when you have that, and Beach has been bonding with our right guard, Tristan Colon, who's filled in really admirably for Will Hernandez. So there's a chemistry factor there. So I'm going to guess it's going to be Beach. Kyle, what's your guess?
I would operate under the assumption it's going to be Beach. They've been so good on the offensive line recently that I don't imagine them breaking up continuity, but this is a difficult decision because often they say you don't lose the starting job to injury, but Beach, I saw you brought up the stat on Twitter that Beach had been one of the best pass blockers across the board in the league the last couple weeks. So I think they'll stick with Beach. I didn't hear the Jonathan Gannon quote until you brought it up, but that makes me think that they'll stick with Beach at least for this week, right? Like it's probably one of those things that as soon as there's a bad performance or as soon as there's an injury, they'll jump at the opportunity to make the switch. But I think if it was a Christian Jones or a younger player who was playing well, perhaps they would be more apt to make that switch back to Jonah Willams. But because it's Beach, because he's the longest tenured player on the team, because he's regarded as that captain-like figure of sorts, I think he has more runway to hang on to the job until proven otherwise, especially, because he's playing so well. I think all this starts with the fact that he's playing great at right tackle right now. And then you go from there and say, not only is he playing great at right tackle, he's been on the team for 10 years. He's well regarded in the locker room. So yeah, they'll stick with Beach at least this week. Maybe we'll come back on Monday and see how the results go.
Yeah, well said. And I think depth-wise, what this does for the Cardinals is quite an asset, because now you got, if Jonah Willams is the swing tackle, we know he's had 3 years starting experience at left tackle and 2 years starting experience at right tackle. What a luxury it is to have a guy with that kind of experience in that role, and not a Christian Jones who's not ready for that role yet, because we saw how he struggled at left tackle in preseason when he was a rookie playing two positions. And, I think they're going to groom Christian Jones to be a swing tackle, and it's going to take a little time. But having a guy with that kind of experience, to be able to rely on at either spot would be huge. And
and for the first time in years, they have the luxury of time to work on developmental projects, because they're getting great production out of the tackles, both Paris Johnson and Kelvin Beachum. They're getting, and they have Jonah Willams, obviously. So they're getting
right.
great production out of that position for the first time in God knows how many years.
And even if it's the other way around, if you have Kelvin Beachum as a swing, there's a guy who's played a lot of years at left tackle, and he filled in for us there last year quite admirably, when DJ went down. And then, of course, he's been playing really well at his most natural position. And now that he's older, as right tackle, and he's been, doing great. So I think that's going to be the decision. And I think for good reasons. But, you never know now. So, but I think it's cool that they have the day-to-day to get Jonah synced back into the defense. Beach can take his veteran day off. And, I think the Cardinals are stronger because of it. And it's exciting to see the kind of success they're having on an offensive line. The most physical, attack dog, and skilled, now growing on skilled pass protecting group that we've had in quite some time. And so, and they're really helping carry the offense, being able to run the ball the way they're doing and being able to protect Kyler. I think Kyler, last I checked, I'm sure this is true, no quarterback has taken more hits in the NFL this year than Kyler. I think it's a really low number. It's like, I think under 20. And or if it is, it's in the early 20s. And Kyler's among the leaders of least sacked quarterbacks in the league. So
yeah, just to clarify, you're saying he's been hit the least amount of times this year.
Correct.
Yeah, no quarterback has been hit.
Most?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew what you meant. I just want to clarify for people. He has been hit the least of any quarterback this year.
Excuse me. Right. Yeah. It's shades of his Oklahoma days. He hardly ever got hit there. He was so clever, running out of bounds at the right time, sliding at the right times, and he had a really physical offensive line who protected him well. So it's happening that way this year, with him taking the least amount of hits of any quarterback. That is a fact. No quarterback has taken more hits. And that's pretty impressive, too, given that he's, run the ball a few times every game, and with success. So sometimes that comes into account when you're running the ball. All right, so there's the right tackle spot. I think that's pretty well set. The rotations otherwise on offense look really solid, and I think What's interesting to me is that if you watched the 49ers um, Seahawks game, the receiver for the 49ers was Jennings, Jawan Jennings, had the big day for them. Not Debo, not Pearsall, not their speed guys, and McCaffrey not as much, but it was Jennings, a bigger wide receiver. And guess what? We got two of them. We got MHJ and we have um, Wilson, M Willie. So I have a feeling if they post up MHJ and M Willie the way that Shanahan did with Jennings, that may work to our advantage some, particularly off play action. So that's an FYI. All right. So now flipping over onto the other side of the ball, uh, we got an interesting situation. Jalen Thompson was not practicing again today, and at least in the early portion of practice. And Jonathan Gannon said that he's making progress. Had a good week last week rehabbing, and so he thinks he's improved and getting ready to come back. The question I would have is if it's by this weekend, does he just go right back in and replace the Rabbit, or does the Rabbit stay? Now I'm gonna flip it over to Kyle to ask his advice on that before I chime in. So we're gonna flip the script.
So I just a question. I think I know which direction I'm going, but I didn't see the Pro Football Focus grades for the last game against the Jets. Was Taylor-Demerson high on the team in Pro Football Focus grades like he had been in previous weeks?
He was in the low 60s. I was surprised at that because I watched him a lot during the game. A lot of us did. I watched him a lot during the game, and I thought he was fantastic. I mean, and a lot of times it's when you don't notice someone that he's doing really great, particularly a free safety. Like you have to kind of look for it. It's when you do notice a free safety getting beat that you're like, I didn't see that happen virtually at all in that game. And they had such a stellar game plan against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, and they really pulled it off. But one of the main reasons was that the Rabbit was making it difficult for Rodgers to attack downfield the way he did the week before against the Texans to such success. And they had that great one-handed grab, by Wilson in the end zone and stuff. Those were downfield, dimes that Rodgers was throwing it. And between the pass rush, improved pass rush the Cardinals had, and the back end coverage, which by the way is also being, accommodated at times by the all everything Garrett Williams. I saw that on his Syracuse tapes when he played deep, he played great. And he played up, he played great. Now, I mean, the Cardinals are dipping into that, and you've got two guys on the back end who can really get places. And the Cardinals are going to need that against this prolific trio of receivers in DK Metcalf, in Cardinal nemesis Tyler Lockett, and in the ever ascending,
Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Jackson Smith and Jigba, who has really become their go-to guy this year, with Ryan Grubb, the Washington Huskies OC, now turned OC at up in Seattle. So, he's their Jalen Polk kind of guy this year that was winning all the time on the inside last year in Washington. So, we got our hands full. It'd be interesting to see what the matchups are on that. I'm just going to quickly say, if I were doing them, I'd put Garrett Williams on Najigba. All right. Then I'm going to put Max Melton on DK because Max played MHJ so well at Rutgers, a taller wide receiver like that with speed. Max, I think, will like be a gnat, that DK will try to swat away and be in his face. So I would put him over there, and then I put Starling on Lockett. I might flip it and put Max on Lockett and Starling on, and that's probably more like what they will start with, but they might switch it up somewhere in between. And that's the other big decision we'll get to in a minute, is what to do with Sean Murphy Bunting in light of our young bucks in the back there. So, but let's continue with this.
Yeah.
Um, so, given I'm going to say it was a surprisingly lower score than I would realize, than I, recognize for him, but he passed the eye test big time and the scoreboard test.
Yeah.
So,
And so I think for that reason, I would be more apt to a platoon situation as compared to the right tackle, because with the right tackle, I think it's just you let Beach go until Beach proves otherwise. Like, I think he can play every down. You don't have to worry about swapping right tackles in and out or something like that. This one, I think there's more 60-40 type of splits in terms of snaps. And again, I don't know how healthy Jalen Thompson is exactly, whether they were going to have to play him limited snaps anyways in the next game. But
right,
when you're facing the Seahawks, it's interesting because they're one of those teams that, because they air the ball out so much, playing two high safeties is essential. And I'll ask you, obviously you're watching it closer, if you need to play more two high safety coverages, especially with DK Metcalf, you would prefer Thompson be the one who's playing in those types of coverages, or Taylor-Demerson?
oh, Taylor-Demerson all day.
Okay, so if that's the case, then you think Demerson should be playing the Lions' share of the snaps? Absolutely. I think they would be able to get away just fine with either of them because the safety position is such a strength. What I'm more curious about is, will they run more nickel formations, or will they
Right,
substitute Popo in at linebacker? I'm curious what they do more
right,
so with the linebacking unit than the secondary, because I think whether it's Taylor-Demerson or whether it's Jalen Thompson, you're doing different things on different plays based on kind of what the Seahawks are doing. And that's the thing that's tricky about defense too, is defense is such a reactionary type of system. You're looking at what they're putting out there, and
right.
what personnel packages they have, whether it's Lockett in the slot or Jackson Smith and Jigba in the slot. Are they running two tight end sets? I know Noah Fant might be out this week for the Seahawks, so that might, make it a little bit easier in terms of the line share production, but it's tough. I think there's room for platooning both of them. It shouldn't be like it was early in the season where Taylor-Demerson is getting 10 snaps and, you know,
Oh yeah, yeah,
Thompson's getting the rest, but I think
right.
60-40 split. And again, give it some leeway based on if the Seahawks decide we're going to run four wide receiver personnel on 70% of the pack of the plays, then obviously you're adapting accordingly. I'm just curious to see how they play. Will they play more nickel defense? Are they going to bring Popo in more? I'm kind of curious how they're going to put that together, but I think there's room for both, but Taylor-Demerson probably is like 60-40, I would say, in terms of snap count.
Yeah, we won't know if Jalen Thompson actually will either be activated, but it sounded from Gannon like he's heading in that direction. I'm going to guess this. I'm going to guess. Well, first of all, one of the really great uh, things that the Rabbit did against the Jets was the pass breakups over the middle, and the one in the red zone. Yeah, it was a slight tick, but it was enough for Devontae Adams to not be able to catch the ball. Those are the kind of plays that typically have been hurting the Cardinals when they were getting scored on in the back of end zones. So to see that, and then the middle of the field, and be the disruptor, and this kid gets his hands on footballs or gets to the football, and he's an instinctive tackler. I think he's here to stay on the deep end. And I think what role suits Jalen Thompson the best is to play up and play man against the tight ends. I think he's that's a role that he can handle really well. And like you said, Noah Fant might might be out again this week.
Yeah, well, it seems like it's trending that way, but we don't know for sure.
Right. So, but still, is that I think that they can craft a role in sub packages for Jalen that suits his skills, and you don't want to take Boot off the field. He's just so valuable, and so. But if they're in man situations, they need someone to cover the tight end. I like it. I think it would be a good move. So yeah, and as for Sean Murphy-Bunting, he played 39 snaps or 34 snaps. They basically platooned him with Max Melton and with Garrett Williams and Starling Thomas. And that may continue, and maybe they'll put Sean Murphy-Bunting on Metcalf because Murphy-Bunting has the length and the speed to do it. I'm not sure this year he's shown the suddenness or the recovery speed that you would expect from him. But I think the future's now for these young bucks. I think they're so good, so aggressive, and they're playing so well that it hurts paying a guy $8.5 million a year to not play much, but you got to do what's best for the team, and again, I think they can mix and match with Bunting on certain matchups, and maybe taking a bit of a lesser role and honing in on one aspect of a responsibility will be a good thing for him to get his confidence back, and to get sort of further assimilated into the defense. But yeah, I mean, I'm just so high on these young guys, and as I've been saying to you, I love K'Trell Clark, and he can hardly get in the game. So, it's nice to have depth there, and it's homegrown, and you got to love it when it's working. Don't stand in the way of it. This what drove me nuts about Steve Keim, and signing free agents ahead of drafting at that position, and then going with the free agents over the draft picks and making them wait 2 or 3 years. Like look at Trey McBride, his rookie year was had to sit behind Zach Ertz, and that was understandable. I mean, Zach Ertz was still playing at a high level, and it was prior to his injury. But but Trey McBride, look at him. I mean, come on. And you got these younger guys in practice when they're showing you they're more physical and they're better athletes. You got to pay attention to that. So it's interesting to have these kind of dilemmas. Although I think they're kind of working their way out. And then what's interesting this week was to hear that the rumor is the Cardinals look like they're going to stick with Chad Ryland, the kicker, for long-term engagement with the team. He's already under contract for next year. It's just such a feel-good story, and he's been so good. And boy, the kid has quite the leg. You feel bad for Matt Prater, who's this could be the swan song of his NFL career, or maybe this inspires him to come back somewhere else next year. And I don't know what exactly they'll do with him. I don't know if they can afford a roster if they're pursuing a playoff chance. I'm not sure opportunity. I'm not sure you can have the luxury of keeping 2 kickers and and splitting time with them or whatever. Keeping Prater as the long distance guy. The thing is, we've seen with Chad Ryland, he's nailing them for 55 just fine. So it's
I would
not
guess
like
what probably happens is they just leave Prater on IR. I guess would be probably the most likely option.
yeah. And then there's the other scenario where you don't want him to wind up in the hands of a rival. Um, but Matt's getting paid handsomely, and which he's earned and he deserves. And I mean, at least financially, he's being rewarded, and he's working his way back into top physical shape. And it's going to be should be a interesting decision for the Cardinals and how they're going to handle this. But if it was a Steve Keim, he'd go right back to Prater, and I think at times that really hurt the Cardinals. Um, and Steve Keim always sort of had a way with kickers and punters. I don't know. We can go back in time, and let's not go there. He meant well, but some of the decisions, like keeping two kickers to have a holder on the roster, there were some decisions there that cost the team, and unfortunately, in unfortunate ways. This time around, I think that Monty will be more judicious and have to make the tough calls that have to be made in these situations. So, yeah. What do you think about the Chad Ryland scenario in Arizona?
Hey, as long as you have a kicker, that's kind of my thought. It's better to have two kickers than no kicker because being in the wilderness of kickers sucks so much. And
Yeah,
I don't know what the best call is there, but as long as you have one guy who can hit 55-yard field goals, you're gonna be just fine. I wouldn't worry too much about like, oh, Prater might go and sign with another playoff team because you don't know in those situations. You shouldn't let that dictate what you do or don't do with the kicker or the cap space or whatever it is. You never know. You want what's best for the guy. If he's healthy and still able to kick and someone wants to bring him on mid-season, then by all means go for it. But uh, for the Cardinals, as long as you have one guy,
right.
you're good. There's I mean, I joked this year that kickers, I don't think any position has gotten palpably better than kickers because I'm watching Bates for the Lions just knock down 62 yarders like it's nothing. Or, seven teams have guys who can hit 60-yard field goals now. And I'm just, as long as you're not one of the teams in the wilderness trying to find a kicker
Yeah,
like the Jets going four kickers in 4 weeks, or the 49ers going from Moody to Carlson back to Moody, but now they don't want Moody. As long as you're not that, then you're good.
that's a scenario I don't want. I don't want Prater anywhere near San Francisco.
That's
So,
it's fair, but I
you
just
know,
think you can't control it.
you may not be able to, but Prater to the AFC all day long, man. Um, if there's some way they could work it out. I don't know if they can, but if there is, but anyway, uh, no decision needs to be made on that this week. And Chad Ryland is quite developing into a fan favorite, understandably so. It's a great story, and you know, um, he and Blake Gillikin and Aaron Brewer have been fantastic. I mean, they have helped make Cardinals special teams look special, and we're very grateful to all three of them. Want continued success. So, um, yesterday I posted, did a whole bunch of rankings of the NFC West of all the PFF categories and national, like rankings of teams and stuff like that. And so we're going to pop that on a graphic. I'm going to read the scores in each case, and Kyle's going to tell us who the leader in the division is.
All right. So here we have our graphic. The people
All
can
right.
see that on the
These are the
screen.
PFF grades, and, by the
Hold on.
NFC West,
We're going to get it
as they
back up again.
currently stand.
Uh-huh.
And so with each category, I was fascinated to do this because I wanted to see how the Cardinals stack up grade wise in each category versus the rest of the NFC West. Um, I think it's an interesting read because, like, overall, they have the Cardinals grade at 11, ranked 11th, the Rams at 16, the Niners at 4, and Seattle at 10. Who's the best in the division?
Overall, that would be the San Francisco 49ers.
Now, how do you explain that with a worse record and a record of 5-5, they have grade wise, an overall grade wise, in the top 5?
You know what? I kind of look at those two as about the same. I'm more surprised with the gap more than it is the Niners being ahead of them because the Niner if Chad Ryland misses that field goal at the end of the game or the Niners block that field goal, the Niners are 6-4 and the Cardinals are 5-5. So I think the difference between those two teams is barely nothing. I'm more surprised by the gap between the two teams.
Yeah, I would just say, and interesting that Seattle's ranked as graded one shade better than the Cardinals, which in certain respects, when we go through these, it doesn't surprise me. It's just what it says to me is the 49ers in each of their position groups have been really solid. It's just that they're squandering away games late. I think like 4 of the 5 games they've lost in the last minute of the game. And if you flip those scores and they're, like 7-3 instead, it would warrant a grade of 4. But that's the way that they do it. It's a conglomeration of all the position group grades and factors, and so.
And I know we'll get to this later, but since we're talking about the overall, the one that I think is helping bump that a little bit is this special teams one for the Niners. Because if you look at DVOA special teams rankings, the Niners are like 31 or 32 in the league right now. I don't know how
Yeah,
they got that number of 22, but
yeah, we'll get to that when
yeah.
we get down there. So, offense: Cardinals 5, Rams 17, Niners 4, Seahawks 10. And the winner is,
By the
the leader is,
slimmest of margins, the San Francisco 49ers.
I take that as a compliment. Because boy, can they play offense, and for us to be on a par with them, and I think actually in certain ways a little better than they are uh, in the running game, although they are really good in the running game. But look at the grades when we get to the running game. That's a coup at this point. So to be a top 5 offense by PFF's ratings is awesome, and I'm really happy with that. So the passing game: Cardinals 6th, Rams 21st. That was a surprise to me. Niners 12, Seahawks 5. And the leader is,
By the slimmest of margins again, this one, the Seattle Seahawks.
yes, and with their Fab 3 receiving group, and they're putting up big numbers, by the way, gang. If you look at their offensive numbers, it's impressive. They just, where they're losing games is more so in other ways than their passing game.
Yeah, I think Geno Smith is second in the league in passing yards right now, I want to say. I haven't looked at them after last week's updates, but I think only Kirk Cousins is ahead of him in passing yards.
Yeah, and when Dan Viens of Forever Seahawks podcast, remember we had him as our guest as doing the NFC West preview prior to the season. He and I were wondering, the wild card I said in the division could be Ryan Grubb and his vertical passing game with nuanced wrinkles. If that, how well he could assimilate that into the NFL. And so far, the results look very positive.
Uh, just checking the numbers real quick. So Geno is fourth right now in passing yards behind Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, and Kirk Cousins. However, Geno's played 10 games. Everyone else has only played 11 games. So if you do average, Geno Smith is number one in the league in yards per game.
There you go. So we got our hands cut out for us for sure in their passing attack. And we got to say hello to Kenneth Walker III and make it difficult on him, obviously, and not let Geno beat us with his legs. So we have that. Now, pass blocking. Cardinals 4, Rams 30th, Niners 13, Seahawks 26. And the leader is?
By a large margin, the Arizona Cardinals.
Yes! Who'd have thunk it? PFS had us, our offensive line ranked 30th at the beginning of the year, and I was BS about that. So was so many of our members at ROTV. Oh, the injustice. And now look at this. And what a coup for the Cardinals. And as we've talked about before, when you have the quarterback who's the least hit in the NFL and right up in the top 3 of the least sacked, this is what you get. And it's just awesome. And wow, look at the gap. I mean, so I hope the Cardinals defensive guys are looking at that 26 and going like, let's pin our ears back and get after Geno. So receiving, Cardinals 10th, Rams 5th, Niners 3rd, Seahawks 8th. And the leader is?
The San Francisco 49ers, despite losing Brandon Ayuk about 5 weeks ago to a torn ACL.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And look at that gang. Receiving groups, 4 of the top 10 in our own division. Pretty cool.
The one thing I'll say about the Niners, too, is I was skeptical when they moved Jawan Jennings to the X and had Pearsall play in the slot, but it's worked out really well for them. I was confused by that choice, but it's worked out just fine.
Yeah, they've done really well. And Jennings is really good at using his body as leverage and doing post-ups. He's very savvy. The run game, Cardinals 7th, Rams 25th, Niners 12th, Seahawks 6th. And the leader is?
Again, by the slimmest of margins, the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, that one surprised me. I didn't realize they were running it that well. But maybe those 2 Geno runs late against the Niners got them that the slimmest of lead over the Cardinals.
Kenneth Walker is great, man. I know Charbonnet's been part of it too, but Kenneth Walker is just great. I used to joke in college the play calling was so easy because you would just say, Kenneth Walker, go do something cool, and he would do something cool every time. It was just he's really good.
He's got beast mode ability, so we've seen that before, and he's no slouch out of the backfield either. You got to pay attention to him. So run blocking, Cardinals at 14. I dispute that because I think it's harder to grade a zone blocking team on their assignments, which I see the Cardinals just balling out so often and doing so well. Because your assignment can shift, in numerous ways. The typical pull rule when you teach pulling is first flash of color, hit it. In other words, first threat. Color meaning the opposite jersey. And then the rule is if there's no flash, you turn up field and now find the first flash of color. And the Cardinals are doing that so well, gang. They're doing it so well with everybody, with the 2 guards, with the tackles when they pull, and with Froho, who's just outstanding at it. So, I think I'm going to question that a little bit, but hey, so Cardinals 14, Rams 11, Niners 1, Seahawks 19th. And the leader is?
The San Francisco 49ers, and for my money, the greatest left tackle I've ever seen, Trent Williams.
Yes. And now that McCaffrey's back, maybe their run game numbers will improve because it's weird to have the best blocking graded run blocking and only be 12th in the run game. So, but I think they get a little pass happy at times, and they've been behind in games more than usual this year. So, that has a factor. That is, they're not like coasting away, ground and pounding in the fourth quarters with big leads like they were able to do last couple of years. So, defense: Cardinals 27, Rams 14. That's a shocker, but it's true. Niners 8th, Seahawks 20th. And the leader is?
The San Francisco 49ers, which I'm sure this one is part of why those overall rankings look the way they do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I was even thinking the last couple of weeks that they might be missing Steve Wilkes. They played better last year than they are this year.
They've also been ravaged by injuries this year. I mean, Javon Hargrave's gone for the season. Hufunga's
Yeah,
been in and out. Charvarius Ward, for non-football reasons, is gone at this point. So
right,
they've just been crushed by injuries.
right. Cardinals defensive grade is somewhat deceiving because of how better they played recently. But it's ascending because it was in the 30s a few weeks ago, and now it's up to 27. As is the run defense is 19. For the Rams, it's ninth. For the Niners, it's 27th. And for the Seahawks, it's 22nd. And the leader in the clubhouse?
The Los Angeles Rams.
And man, have they drafted well? Let's give the Rams, Les Snead, unbelievable how he gets it done over there. I mean, Turner. I mean, they get Jared Verse is playing outstanding. I mean, they just know how to evaluate defensive line talent, and but we're going to get a boost. We got our guy coming back, and Darius Robinson, and we got a couple young bucks playing pretty well there. Dante Stills, Roy Lopez, and Karis Tonga. I mean, these guys are, and LJ Collier has been coming on. So, yeah, really encouraged to see what they can do. But this is, if you told us 19th at this point in this season, we'd take it. And told us that Bilal Nichols and Justin Jones would be out after 3 weeks. I mean, that's really saying something. I mean, I got to give the coaches a lot of credit. Love Derek LeBlanc as our defensive line coach. I think he's outstanding, and you're doing a great job. He does more with less than anyone I've seen in the Cardinals up front. Although I thought Matt Burke was pretty dang good too, but when he was there, he had JJ and Zach. So, all right, so tackling. It's interesting. Narrowly missed out on this one, but it's close. 13th for the Cardinals, 20th for the Rams, 23 for the Niners, and 12th for the Seahawks. And the leader in the clubhouse is?
Again, the Seattle Seahawks by 1 point. This seems to be a theme of this. By 1 point, the Seahawks are ahead of the Cardinals.
Right, right. And that's what's so interesting about this is looking at it. But, it's so great to see our tackling led by Budda Baker. I mean, he's the trendsetter. But we really have been making progress there, and it's good to see. And it still can get better, obviously. And I think the more and Kaiser White last couple of weeks has really been stepping up, which is huge. And got to see Mac Wilson. Is it senior or junior? Mac Wilson.
I think it's Mac Wilson Sr.
Yeah, senior. Mac Wilson Sr. to he's kind of been a little invisible lately. I think we need him have a renaissance because also they were splitting time with him on the edge. That's why. And now that they got Browning to play the weak side edge, it may give us more time to have Mac Wilson Sr. playing downhill the football from the line inside linebacker position. That could be a boon. All right, so pass rush 30th for the Cardinals, although eight sacks. Wait a minute, 6-3, 9 sacks in the last 2 games, with 17 different guys getting pressures. That's pretty cool, man. That is manufactured. Credit to Nick Rallis, credit to Rob Rodriguez, credit to Derek LeBlanc, credit to the entire defensive coaching staff, because that's been a coup and quite a surprise, a nifty surprise from the Cardinals last 2 games. So in recent games, you wouldn't think they were 30th. But we do, we don't have the name brand, put it that way, like a Nick Bosa or whatever. And then the Rams are 8th, Niners 13th, and Seahawks 20th. And the leader in the clubhouse?
Once again, the Los Angeles Rams. Pretty incredible stuff so far. They're top 10 in run defense and pass defense, and like you said, or pass rush. And I would not have guessed that until seeing these statistics.
Yeah, and minus Raheem Morris, which is incredible. They're playing this well with him gone, and without Aaron Donald. I mean, talk about addressing. Okay, we got a plan in case Morris leaves and Donald retires. Got to give him credit, man. And these Rams don't. They have as as good a chance as anyone, in my opinion. And you can make an argument all the way across the board here. That's what makes this NFC West so compelling. And
I was optimistic about the Rams coming into the season.
yeah,
However, if you had told me their defensive rating would be higher than their offensive rating, which is the case
right,
as of right now, they're
right,
17th in offense and 14th in defense. I
right.
would not have believed it. Would not have believed that they would be a defense first team that is, treading water a little bit, but still right in the thick of the race in the NFC West.
That's right. And so they're back in the thick of it. And it's interesting. A couple weeks ago, everyone was saying, well, the Rams are fizzling out. Last week, they were saying the Seahawks are fizzling out. Nobody's fizzling out. It's going to be, as Monty Ossenfort said to the Cardinals coming in while hugging him for the Jets game, the season starts this, now. And it does in many ways.
Especially because the playoffs are starting to look like it's going to be a one-team division from the NFC West. I mean, they could end up catching them, but they're, I believe, a game and a half back right now of the last wild card spot. The 5-5
Right,
group is.
right. So, yeah, I mean, in a few weeks, we'll have a sense of that. But, of course, you win the division, you get the home playoff game. And at the worst, a 4 seed. So, yeah, that's all eyes are on the division, and winning that would be awesome. And it's going to be quite a dogfight, as we know. And these divisional games are territorial, and they're as they said on Fox so well. These division games have a character all their own. They're always tight. They're always well played, hard fought. So, and the other teams know each other pretty well. So, and then pass coverage. This is where it gets exciting for me, is that we're now seeing a switch away from zones into sticky man, and it's skyrocketing our coverage grades. Now we're 18th. We were down near 30th several games ago. Now the Rams are 28th, and then the Niners are second, and then the Seahawks are 12th, and the leader is
The San Francisco 49ers.
yeah, yeah, those dudes cover. And what's interesting is that they've got a good pass rush. It hasn't been great, and of course losing Hargrave hurt, and but the combination can be really good. But Bosa's injured now. They re-signed Lenore to a huge deal. I was wow. He's balling,
Yeah,
no
he's been their
question
best
about it.
defensive player this year.
He really has, and he's earned it. And but they keep paying guys big, huge money. It's probably going to catch up to him at some point. Special teams, ninth for the Cardinals, 21st for the Rams, 22nd for the 49ers, and 5th for the Seahawks. Gosh dang you, Seahawks! You're
Yep.
nipping us out.
That punter for the Seahawks is something else. I think his name is Dixon. He's
oh, yeah.
excellent.
Isn't he great?
Yeah, he's excellent for the Seahawks.
Yeah, and we got DJ Dallas, who was one of two players to take it to the house on the new kickoff rules. He was the very first. And if you haven't seen the Cardinals flight plan, there's a great interview with him at the beginning of the show. And there's a really good interview with Kaiser White. And then there's a really good interview with Paris Johnson Jr. And then there's a really good interview with Kyler Murray. And then there's footage of the Cardinals nighttime sponsorship of the girls flag football league in Arizona that's really popular and doing great. So it's a great show, and check it out. You'll really enjoy it. So, but really happy where our special teams are. And so with that being the case, how many categories did the Cardinals lead, or how are they leading in?
Let's add it up here. So we
I'll
have
make it easy for you. It's one, and it's pass blocking. Pretty cool.
how many did they finish top 2 in? I would guess it's probably 6.
Yeah, there's an interesting. So they're close. They're close enough in other categories to take the lead at some point. It's a good point.
Yeah, I think 6 categories. They're
Right.
top 2.
Right. So what I did was, if we scroll down, I did best and worst for each of the 4 teams. And I think it's interesting to look at. For the Cardinals, the best was pass blocking, and the worst, of course, was pass rush. So the Rams' best receiving, we can understand that with Kupp and Nakua and Atwell. Worst is their pass coverage. We know that. Niners' best is pass coverage. Worst is run defense. Yeah, they've really got an issue with that. And then Seahawks' best is in 2 spots tied, passing and special teams, and their worst is pass blocking. All right, so then turn to points. So these are the rankings. Points per game, the Cardinals are 13th, ranked 13th in the NFL. Rams are 21st. Niners are 8th. Seahawks 16th. And the leader in the clubhouse?
That would be the San Francisco 49ers.
And we're not that far behind them. So we're chasing. Wouldn't it be great if we could finish out first in the division in points per game? Now, this is what gets interesting to me. Points allowed. Cardinals 12, Rams 22nd, Niners 16th, Seahawks 21st.
Yeah, the Arizona Cardinals.
Can you believe it?
I
Okay,
honestly don't. I'm very surprised by this. Not that the
right,
Seahawks are killing it. I'm surprised the Rams have allowed so many points this year, given we just saw all their defensive rankings.
right,
But yeah, I
yeah,
wouldn't have guessed it. I wouldn't have guessed they would finish last in team defense, but first in points allowed.
right. And to show us how lumped we are within the division, the point differential, which the Cardinals finally, after last week, got on the plus side because of their lopsided win, they're 13th ranked in the league. The Rams are 21st. The Niners are 12th, and the Seahawks are 19th. We're all sort of lumped in there together with that. So it just shows you how tight this division is. But to think that if you had told us after 10 weeks or 10 games that two the what the Cardinals would be leading the division in was pass blocking and points allowed, least points allowed, obviously, you'd be like, what? Wait, what? And this just speaks to how well the Cardinals are improving. And, I mean, this is despite a couple of the early lump games and the quality of the schedule to be where they are now. Now, they've been a stingy defense in over the last month or so. The Dolphin game was a bit of an aberration because for 3 quarters the Dolphins were dealing and scoring. But man, the way they put the clamps on the Chargers and the Bears and the Jets, with three pretty dang good quarterbacks and Justin Herbert, Caleb Williams, and capable quarterbacks, and of course Aaron Rodgers. Kind of nice. And then we'll finish out with power team rankings. Kyle, take care away. You read them.
All right. So we'll start off with the card. Should we do each team where they rank according to all five, or should we go team by team here?
Go ESPN across the board.
All right. So for the ESPN rankings, they have the Cardinals at 10, the Rams at 18, the 49ers at 12, and the Seattle Seahawks at 19, which,
Interesting that we're all lumped in that like middle, 10 to 20 area.
yeah, they're in the second
Right.
third, basically.
Right. And
Um,
Cardinals in the lead.
well, that might be a theme here because now we go to Fox. They have Cardinals at 10, same as ESPN. Rams 21, Niners 11, so one spot behind the Cardinals,
Yeah.
and the Seahawks at 16.
Yeah. CBS.
CBS has the Cardinals at 10, same. The
Yeah.
Rams at 18, so the same as ESPN. The
Right.
49ers at 15th, and then the
Yeah.
Seahawks at 14th, which is actually the highest anyone ranks the Seahawks.
Right.
And then
NBC.
we go to NBC. They have the Cardinals 12, the Rams 15, the 49ers 16, and the Seahawks 17.
Look at
And
how lumped that is. Isn't that cool? 15,
everyone's within 5 spots of each
12,
other.
15, 16, 17. That's pretty cool. And that's respect for the division, I think, in a certain sense.
Yeah, I mean, all those teams. I mean,
Yeah.
this one has the Niners one spot behind the Cardinals,
Right.
then the Niners one spot behind the Rams, and one
Right.
spot ahead of the Seahawks. It's different people see them all basically the same. NFL.com has the Cardinals 11, the
Yep.
Rams 15, the 49ers 13, and the Seahawks 16.
Right. Love it. But here's the thing, gang, is that can't get carried away. What I'm really impressed with from Jonathan Gannon, the coaches, the players, they're all saying this. None of the rankings matter. It's just all about their process and trying to go 1-0 each week, and doing all they can to prepare and get right for the next game. They know that, once you start peeking ahead or getting too ahead of yourself or getting too caught up in rankings and this and that, that's what they call outside noise. And they're trying to kind of, phase that out and not listen. And I think that's really smart. Uh, I'm going to join Dan Viennes tomorrow on the Seahawks podcast. He graciously uh, invited me to come talk about the Cardinals. And if there are any questions you'd like me to ask him, Cardinal fans, please post in the Revenge of the Birds posting of this podcast or on the YouTube posting there, because I'd be happy to ask Dan questions about his Seahawks. I think the Seahawks are rejuvenated and pretty excited. It's obviously going to be a really challenging game at Lumen Field for the Cardinals, and to try to pick right back up where they left off. You're going to factor in the crowd, whatever the weather's going to be. And I think it's going to be a hard-fought game. There's no question about it, and quite a challenge. So, but like to get this, this 5-game losing streak to the Seahawks over and done with. As my dad would say, the Cardinals are due. So I sure hope we are, because boy, that would be, imagine that coming out of there with a dub, in light of these circumstances. And so it's great to have meaningful football heading into Thanksgiving, and in the second half of the season. So credit to all the players and coaches who got us in this spot. It's really exciting, and games take on different dimensions. So cool. People have been saying this on Revenge of the Birds, to be talking about meaningful games instead of draft picks, at this time of year, mock draft startings. So this is a nice welcome change and exciting times. Kyle, what do you have to say to wrap things up?
I am so excited for this weekend's game against the Seahawks. Obviously, there's stakes to it, and the Cardinals are in a good position because of their division record in terms of tiebreakers and creating separation in the division. But just from a nerdy football standpoint, and someone who's been obviously watching every Cardinals game this year, I'm just so fascinated to see how this group matches up against the Seahawks, because we just went through the numbers, obviously, and you can see their passing
Yeah.
game is this or that, but I still don't know what the Seahawks do really well. And defensively, beyond Devin Witherspoon, I mean, their secondary is a bit of a wreck. So I'm curious to see, do they just stick Witherspoon on Marvin? Do they alternate linebackers guarding McBride? I'm from a nerdy football standpoint, there's so many different ways this game could go. And it's a real chess match between Grubb and Rallis and I forgot who the Seahawks defensive coordinator is now, but him against
Well, Mike
Petzing.
McDonald, really.
Yeah,
Right.
but McDonald against Petzing, and there's
Right.
so many interesting chess moves they could make, and there's so many different ways to defend the Cardinals given the Seahawks personnel, and ways to defend the Seahawks trio of excellent wide receivers. So I'm from a nerdy football standpoint, I'm very interested to see how the chess match comes together. And I don't
Yeah.
need to hype Cardinals fans up about the Seahawks game any more than it already is. I mean,
Right.
you come here every year and talk about how important the Seahawks game is and how crushed you are every year when they lose a week 18 game to the Seahawks, or whatever it might be. So I'm curious to see how this version of the Cardinals attacks the Seahawks offense and vice versa. How does McDonald and the Seahawks defense adapt to what the Cardinals are doing on offense? Because the Cardinals have
Right.
scored 30 points or averaging 30 points a game for the last 3 weeks. So I don't see any reason why they can't put up 35 or more against the Seattle Seahawks.
Whoa. Wow. Well, there's a prediction. Oh, I'd take that.
We'll
As long as we
see.
win. As long as we win, baby. I'll take 7-6. I mean, we've had an epic Seahawks game that was 6-6.
Yeah.
in overtime.
We have the famous Drew Stanton dancing on the sideline video against the Seahawks. It
Both
could be
teams were
anything.
missing field goals. It was bizarre. I'll never forget that. And then we had the infamous, what was it, 55-0 game up at Lumen that was just Wiz's swan song, unfortunately, did him in. And, but we also had the Drew Stanton great win, the comeback wins
Yes,
from
the dancing on the
Arizona.
sideline. Yes,
Yes.
that's one of my favorite videos because they put it in an NFL commercial years later. They did like an "I'm so excited" and
Yes.
they had Drew Stanton doing the dance, and I thought that was so funny.
Oh, it was tremendous. So, yeah, we've had some good moments up there, and it's a great rivalry. You got to love these rivalries, and there's a lot of respect between both teams, and this is what you want to play for is meaningful football in November, December, and January, and we've got it, and see what happens. It's going to be really exciting. So thank you, Kyle, and I appreciate you jumping in today a little later than normal because Kyle was working this morning at his station. What were you doing this morning? What was the project?
Morning show. I'm filling in this week.
Yeah,
This will mean nothing to anyone, but the Carmichael Dave show with Jason Ross in Sacramento. I am their
yeah.
producer for the week, so I have been waking myself up at 4 a.m. and doing 4 hours of radio from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. on the West Coast. So if anyone's in Sacramento, call in, say hi, or you can just log in on YouTube. If you look it up, it's on YouTube. So if anyone wants to come say hi, that's where I'll be for the next couple days.
Well, this is why you are known as the Cliff Kingsbury of early morning show producers.
Sure.
So
Okay.
appreciate you, man. Appreciate you. And to all the Cardinals fans, interesting to kick back and have a bye week. Now it's back in business, and can we get back on the saddle and keep this baby trotting along and galloping along? Wow, this has really been fun, and be interested to see how this game goes up in Seattle. And thanks for tuning in, and for all of us, may the red rain shower down on you into the red, red sea. Red rain.